Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us tonight for what is actually our eighth virtual town hall since coronavirus really landed on all of us here in Maine and in the United States. And it's May now. It feels like it has been such a long haul these past couple of months as we have really dramatically shifted our lives and how we do everything. And I wanted to start tonight by just reminding people, as we always do at the beginning of these virtual town halls, that we are in this together and we will find our way through this together. Nobody is alone. And I know that sometimes and some days it feels that way with the challenges that we face in so many ways. But every time you feel that way, I ask you to keep reaching out to each other or to reach out to us to see how we can help you and how we can keep connecting people to each other. So tonight we are joined by Dan Kleban, who, as Tim mentioned, is the founder, co-founder, and co-owner, along with his brother, Dave, of Maine Beer Company right here in Freeport. And we asked Dan to join us tonight. And as those of you might know who have joined us on other town halls, we have been doing a series of town halls with guests so that we can really focus and put a spotlight on what's happening for people all around Maine and also how people are stepping up in different ways. Now, Dan and his brother and all of the employees at Maine Beer Company are truly doing their part, making sure that they understand where there is need and rising to the challenge. In this case, Maine Beer Company has donated beer to distilleries who are then able to, well, distill it down and pass it on to the University of Maine and actually create high grade hand sanitizer for hospitals. Now, hopefully, I said that correctly. Dan is going to give us a lot more information on exactly how that all works and how they came to be involved. But I want to first thank them for what they have done and how they're participating. But I also want to point out why it is so important. Because I think, as all of us know, as we have looked at how coronavirus has spread across the country and across Maine, we've seen that there is a real need for protective equipment. Now, that includes hand sanitizer. It also includes personal protective equipment like masks and gowns and face shields. And it includes testing and the ability and funding to do contact tracing. Having these tools at our disposal is the only way that we can adequately fight this virus and also emerge from it with our health continuing to be intact. Now, I wish I could say that we have seen the leadership we need at the federal level to help us with this. But in fact, because we haven't, it's why it has been so important and necessary for companies like Maine Beer Company and others to change their production lines or to donate their own produce and supplies in order to make a change like this. Look, this is great and it's what we need. But the reality is, if we are going to continue to fight coronavirus on a national level through every single state, we've got to have leadership from the federal level. And if the Trump administration is not going to step up and really coordinate both the production of and the supply chain of these important tools to fight it, then Congress is going to need to come back into session and actually put into action bills like the Emergency Medical Supply Chain Act. Ways that we can force the coordination of production of, but also the coordination of these valuable tools for us. In the meantime, I think we also need to recognize and encourage Congress to do a couple of other things. Make sure, for example, that there is enough funding still flowing through to states, to hospitals, to municipalities, so that we can continue to fight this virus, and also so that we can lift up and stimulate the economy around us and take care of people in this time of need. All that being said, let's turn now to Dan Kleban from Maine Beer Company, who is here. And Dan, I'm hoping that you can tell us a little bit about yourself, about Maine Beer Company, what you're doing today, and then we can take it from there.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me on. it's interesting these times, meeting over a computer screen, knowing that there are other people that you can't see. But I'm happy that you invited me on to talk about this, the way that I think Mainers and Americans are really kind of coming together and repurposing their operations. Small businesses are repurposing their operations to meet this crisis, this unprecedented crisis. Like you said, Maine Beer Company, me and my brother founded Maine Beer Company actually during the Great Recession. So we're kind of bookended. We started in 2009, and here we are in 2020 during the COVID-19 pandemic. But we really, we started our company with kind of a higher purpose. Our motto is "Do what's right." We've always tried to be a model of how the small business community can actually have a really positive impact, not only on the lives of their employees, but on their communities and the environment. And so, when this crisis kind of came up on us, and it became apparent that there was a critical shortage of PPE and sanitizer. The the beer and the distilling community came together, and I think it's a great example of industries working together and kind of making the best of a bad situation. Obviously, so here we are, and while it's a shame that good beer had to get repurposed, and people aren't out in restaurants and bars, and life isn't normal. At least some of the product that would have otherwise had to have been poured down the drain because of the lack of sales. Bars and restaurants are closed. We were able to turn it into something that has been very useful to the Maine hospital system.
Yeah. That's amazing, really, and such innovation and ingenuity, I think, on the part of you and the all of the breweries and distilleries and others who are involved. I'm wondering, could you share a little more with us about how this process works for those of us who are not as familiar with how one might turn beer into high grade hand sanitizer?
Yeah, so the analogy I'll use is if you're at a distillery, they if you're going to back up, if you're going to make soup, you can make soup from scratch, and you can make the stock from scratch. You can boil the bones and all of the ingredients, or you can go to the grocery store and buy chicken stock or beef broth. Well, which cuts down the amount of time it takes to make the soup. What we were able to do as breweries, we essentially had the stock. It was sitting in our fermenters at our breweries. We could provide that to the distillers so that they could cut down on the amount of time it took them to convert to make the hand sanitizer. So we have, beer is about 6%, depending on the beer, right? 5, 6, 7% alcohol. What the distillery can do is take that and basically distill away the water and all of the impurities and have pure ethanol, or at least get it to a level where it's appropriate for producing sanitizer. So basically, we were able to jumpstart the process and cut down the amount of time it took for distilleries to make hand sanitizer, and we donated it too, so it cut down on the cost of production as well. So we were able to basically providing products to hospitals or price.
Right. Absolutely. So Dan, and at that point, they're able to distill it down to whether it's 100% ethanol or a hybrid.
Around 70% is what hand sanitizer, what the WHO kind of guidelines are.
Got it. And then from that point, did the distillery send it to the University of Maine for
Mixing it.
more step?
Yeah, and then right, because then it is essentially rubbing alcohol, and so anybody that's applied hand sanitizer knows that there's a consistency to it. So that we've worked. It's another great example of the private sector working with the university system to come up with the correct formulation. So the engineering department at the University of Maine was able to come up with the appropriate formula to be able to then mix the raw kind of just alcohol in order, and then package it safely and provide it to our healthcare professionals.
Yes, right. And just to clarify, all of this hand sanitizer that's being produced is actually being sent to hospitals and to hospitals who are in Maine.
Correct. Yeah, to the best of my knowledge, all of the beer that has been distilled by Maine distilleries was provided to Maine hospitals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This must feel really good to your employees. Can you talk a little bit about that and just how they're managing through things and how you're helping them? Because I know you mentioned your motto is do what's right, and you have always been a model as a business and a business owner of really setting a great example, I think, for other businesses and how you work with your employees.
Well, thank you. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's a tough time. I mean, I think we're all anxious, but you know, the best we can do as an employer is try to make people feel as safe first and foremost,
Mhm.
and as comfortable as possible. Um, and I think this effort, again, there's nothing more soul crushing to a brewer than having to dump the fruits of their labor down the drain. And so the fact that they were able to use at least some of it to help in this, in this awful situation, it's a little bit of a silver lining, and I think we're all looking for
Yeah.
just little bits, little pieces of silver. And this was one of them. I think we have an amazing team here. They're incredibly resilient. We rely upon each other a lot. But it's hard when we are literally physically distanced at work. You can't, we're lacking a lot of that interpersonal kind of connection that we need as human beings here. But we're coping the best we can, and we're just crossing our fingers for better days.
Yeah, absolutely. Agreed. So tell me, Dan, in terms of your business, and obviously you mentioned a little bit, and we all understand the way the supply chain works, and the fact that while restaurants, for example, are closed, you don't have this entire venue in which you normally sell is now essentially closed off to you.
Right.
Is there more that you can envision that we could be doing to help you, or that the federal government could be doing to proactively help you both now and also looking into the future as we move through this pandemic?
Yeah, and I think that the federal government has to play an important role. They're really, state governments are limited in what they can do. Um, I think that we saw about a week or so after, mid-March, right when things were really heating up, Congress come together really in an unprecedented way, and pass kind of the CARES Act, which was really their first large stimulus bill. And I'm, I think there were a lot of things in that were good, and they did it in a short amount of time. A lot of time has passed since that bill was passed, and I think we're seeing some of the flaws, some of the things that were missed, and some of the gaps. I'd like to see, like you just said, not yeah, I want help for my company, but we need help for all of the companies that I rely on, all of the small mom and pop restaurants, carryouts here in the state of Maine, who are going to have a really incredibly hard time opening back up and serving Maine Beer Company beer or any other Maine craft beer when we're on the other side of this. And a lot of them weren't able to take advantage of the PPP program because they were forced to lay everybody off because their businesses were forcibly shut down. Um, and luckily, unemployment was there for many of their employees. Um, I do think that there needs to be some relief for those really small mom and pops who couldn't take advantage of PPP. It wasn't appropriate for them. For those small businesses like mine who were able to take advantage of PPP, I think we know now that 8 weeks is frankly insufficient. We know we're going to be living with this until there's a vaccine, and that's going to be a lot longer than 8 weeks.
Mhm.
Um, so when your revenue is cut in half, and your restaurants are still closed, I think there's a lot more that can be done to support the small business community and all of the people that all of the workers here in Maine. So I'm hopeful that Congress will continue and the administration will continue to work together. Um, we will see. Uh, but I hope they don't forget. I hope they don't forget about all of us. We are the backbone of our communities, and I think we're seeing that now more than ever how important small business is, especially in a state like Maine.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree, are the people who are here when elementary schools come knocking, asking for help with fundraisers, and you support your employees and their families as well. So thank you for everything that you do in a outside a COVID-19 world. But also, Dan, again, thank you to you and Dave and all the people at Maine Beer Company for going the extra mile and figuring out how you could help and make a difference. And having that hand sanitizer available at hospitals. I actually saw in an article that an average nurse on a 12-hour shift will wash his or her hands as many as 100 times, or need to sanitize and clean their hands as many as 100 times during a shift. So it just, I think, really underscores the importance of what you're doing.
Yeah, it does. It feels really good. I mean, we donated 5,000 gallons of beer, and that produced 450 gallons of hand sanitizer, and that was just our brewery.
Wow.
So it feels good, knowing that all of those people working on the front lines. My wife's a nurse. That we're able to give them just a little bit of security, and it does feel good. It's a little bit of a silver lining for sure.
Absolutely. And thanks to your wife, Beth, also for the work that she does as a nurse, and really being on the front lines of a battle here. I'm sure that is worrisome and challenging for you, but we're all grateful.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So, Dan, is there anything else that you want to make sure people who are watching and listening know right now?
Um, no, I mean, I would just end by saying that we as Mainers are incredibly resilient, and I think that this whole effort, which started with the supply chain specialist at the Maine hospital system reaching out to the Maine Brewers Guild, and then the Maine Brewers Guild contacting distilleries, and then distilleries working with the World Health Organization and the University of Maine system to come up with this, I think highlights the ingenuity.
Yeah.
Of the main of Mainers, and but it also highlights, I think, the fact that we do need. I mean, moving forward, we need more coordination. I mean, it's great that we were able to do this, but we shouldn't have had to do this. And moving forward, I hope that one of the things that we learn is that we need a well coordinated response, because this is probably not going to be the last time we have to deal with something like this. So
Absolutely. That's a good note to end on. So, thank you for what you're doing, but also thank you for your time and for joining us tonight.
thank you, Sarah.
Yeah. Okay, so folks who are on with us, I want to just remind you what Tim shared with you as we opened up our virtual town hall tonight. We want to hear from you. We want to hear your questions, thoughts, ideas. So if you want to participate with us on the screen and come live, just go to the bottom of your screen and click on the raise your hand button. Tim will recognize you and bring you onto the screen with me, and we will take as many questions as we can during this time frame that we have. So, on that note, we'll wait for Tim to bring our first guest up with us. And while we're waiting, I want to remind people that the Department of Labor, starting at the end of last week was finally able to implement the ability for people who are self-employed to file for unemployment. Now, this was a long time in coming, and I want to thank people for their patience. There were federal guidelines to wait for, and then the creation of the system online for the department, I understand. So if you are having any problems or issues with that and need help, please go to saragideon.com/COVID-19, where we can connect you with resources and give you some help. And it looks like we have a guest with us, and I will just ask, as each person comes on screen, would you please introduce yourself with your name, but also where you're from?
Hi, I'm Scott Turner. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Hi, Scott. Nice to see you.
Pleasure to meet you, Sarah. And thank you, Dan, for everything that you've done. I submitted a question online. I don't know if you'd seen it, but it was in regard to something completely different. Sorry, Dan. Campaign finance reform. And I'd like to know some of the things, some of the very specific things that you'd like to do to move things along so that we don't have to worry about all these, issues with dark money and super PACs, et cetera, et cetera. So I feel like this is a really central issue. It affects every single thing that our government does. So what can you do in your eyes to change the system?
Yes. Scott, thank you for the question. And in your words, which I agree with, so I'm going to repeat them, this really is the central issue, because when we think about what we are able to accomplish legislatively in Congress or at any level of government, when we think about also all of the many things that we don't see accomplished, I think we can almost always trace it back to campaign finance and the way we run our electoral process. And I want to acknowledge, first of all, that I think there is something very broken with the system that we have. And that's why it is really, really important that people who are running for office talk about where they are on these issues and have plans for how to change it. So first of all, Scott, for me, and if you didn't already know this, I did make the decision when I decided to run for United States Senate to reject all corporate PAC money in this race. And I felt that that was a really, really important thing to do because, whether we are looking at healthcare and prescription drug laws, whether we're looking at ways that we combat climate change, unfortunately, we see that the lobby and corporations are able to wind their way into the discussion. And I think to not only change things from happening, but sometimes completely to prevent things from happening. Now, I would like to see everybody take that pledge, but I also think that there are things that we can actively do as well beyond that. Number one, I think we have to overturn Citizens United. As you know, and hopefully everyone on this call knows, that Supreme Court decision basically said that corporations have a bigger voice than we as people do. Absolutely, corporations don't have a voice, and they most certainly should not have an outsized presence in regarding us. Now, also, I think there are a number of other things that we can do. And I think that includes cracking down on the revolving door between members of Congress and the lobby. We should say that people who have served in Congress can't ever become a member of the lobby. And, so those are some of my ideas. I also think that we should look at models like we have here in this state. Maine is one of two states that have campaign finance reform and clean elections, and a way of really lowering how much money is put into elections, but also thinking about how we can even and level the playing field for people. So I'm interested in exploring those ideas too.
Very good. Yeah, I hope you can succeed with that because, like I said, it's absolutely central to everything. So I will say best of luck.
Thank you so much. Really nice to see you. Okay, so while we're waiting for our next guest to join us, looks like it's going to be momentarily because I can see his name on the tile there. Hello, how are you? Hi there. Gordon, can you hear me?
I can. My name is Gordon Cornell. I'm from Sprucehead Island.
Nice to meet you, Gordon.
I have a question for you. I realize that there's a lawsuit, that's brought by the Republicans and the Trump administration, that's in front of the Supreme Court right now, and it would like to strike down the Affordable Care Act. And I'm worried about what might happen to friends and family members if protections for pre-existing conditions are struck down.
Yes.
What can we do to protect Mainers with pre-existing conditions now, and what would you do in the Senate?
Yeah. Gordon, thank you so much for that question. And this is something that is on my mind, and I know on my colleagues' mind in the State House every single day. So, as we all probably remember, back in 2017, the Trump tax bill was passed. And within that came the genesis of this lawsuit that is in court, putting the Affordable Care Act into extreme jeopardy. Now, whether we think about getting our healthcare on the exchange system that was put into place by the Affordable Care Act, whether we think about the fact that there are so many people who are low-income Mainers and low-income Americans who are able to get their health insurance through Medicaid and Medicaid expansion, or whether we think about simply the core provisions of the Affordable Care Act, which, as you mentioned, protect people with pre-existing conditions and make sure that health insurance companies actually cover those people. These are incredibly important things to all of us and our ability to access healthcare and to afford healthcare in this country. Now, here in Maine, after that tax bill passed and after we saw this lawsuit start, we looked at each other in the legislature and we said, there feels like there's so much out of our control here, but what can we do to help Mainers? And so we actually put into law all the core provisions of the Affordable Care Act. So here in Maine, we know that we're protected even if we have pre-existing conditions, no matter what happens in that federal courtroom or what happens in a future congressional vote to repeal. But, look, we need to recognize that in this country, our healthcare system really is broken. There are too many people who are left behind, who cannot afford their healthcare. And I will share with you that I believe that healthcare is a basic human right, and we need to expand that access to healthcare, and we need to make sure that it is affordable for anybody and everybody. So that is something I am committed to. I think that we need to open up Medicare so that anybody who wants to purchase Medicare can do that. I also think that we need to think about how we put caps on costs for deductibles and other items involved with healthcare. And then I think we need to think about how we can further increase subsidies so that people who are buying and making the choice to buy into Medicare can do it in a way that's affordable to them.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Gordon. I really appreciate you bringing that subject up. I know it is the #1 concern from people, no matter where in Maine we go.
It really is. It's important in the whole country. It's a really big issue for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Stay well. Take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Thanks. So while we are waiting for our next guest to come on, I often on our virtual town halls during these little interim periods remind us all to say thank you to our frontline workers during this pandemic. That includes our healthcare workers, but it also includes our other essential workers who are making sure that we have a grocery store to go to buy our food, or a pharmacy to go to pick up our medicine. But I also want to lift up an idea that I've talked about before and that others talk about on the national level, which is how we can go beyond just saying thank you with words and think about the idea of hazard pay or heroes pay for these people who are putting their own health and the health and well-being of their families on the line too. So something to think about, food for thought for all of us. Hi.
Hi, I'm Janine Atkins, and I live in Massachusetts, but always vacation in Maine, and my daughter and her husband love Maine and live in Maine. So we're happy about that.
Oh, wonderful.
Um,
Hi, Janine. How are
hi.
you?
So I wanted to ask you, I know we're celebrating teachers today, so I appreciate your statement about that. I teach teachers at UMass, and um, I wondered who your favorite teacher was, and maybe how that person influenced you to do the work you do now, which we love.
Well, Janine, thank you for that question. And thank you for teaching teachers. I actually just want to pause for a moment and mention that I had today the joy of talking with a group of teachers in a similar scenario to this on Zoom and checking in with them about what's happening for them right now as teachers, not only with their students, but really recognizing the challenge and heartache for them of not being able to be with their students and to help them in the way that they're accustomed to. And of course, to thank them because, like you said, it is Teacher Appreciation Week. It's hard for me to identify just one teacher. I will say my own teacher that I remember during some of the really formative years of my life was my high school teacher, English teacher, Mr. Metcalf, who really went above and beyond, didn't just teach us English, but also taught us so much about how we relate to each other and think about each other, and really participate in our communities. And so I'm forever grateful to him for that. And of course, as a parent, there are so many teachers that I have had the real privilege of knowing and the real privilege of having teach my own children through these years. And I'm in awe of them and so, so grateful to them.
Thank you.
Thanks, Janine. Take care.
You too.
So I'm tripping on my words while we're waiting for our next guest. I will mention that, during my conversations with teachers, this really has come up. And what I have seen most overwhelmingly is that even as these teachers have transitioned from an already challenging job of teaching successfully to teaching successfully during the time of coronavirus, that what I've seen is not just their concern about the challenge of teaching online, but this real belief in love for and care for their students. And I shouldn't be surprised by that at all. It's what I have known as I have had my own interactions with teachers, especially in these years as a parent, but it is still so striking to me. And I feel that in this Teacher Appreciation Week, we should really all call that out and recognize how incredible they are. So I know I've got somebody else's name on the screen here, Todd Donovan, but I can't see your video, Todd. Are you able to just click onto start video at the top of your tile? It looks like maybe the answer to that was no, that it wasn't working. Technical difficulties. So we shall wait for another person to join us. So thank you so much for the question online there. And community and leadership, so important in all of our daily lives. So first of all, I think that leadership can come in so many different ways and so many different examples. And as we have seen during these days of coronavirus, in the absence of leadership where we would normally expect it, for example, from the federal level, from the president himself, we have seen people step up as leaders all over the place. We have seen people coordinate backpack food programs. We've seen people knock on each other's doors and coordinate delivery of groceries. We have seen companies like Dan's company and so many others, some of whom we've talked to, completely shift their manufacturing and production lines. But ultimately, I think that what leadership is not necessarily having a certain position or role, but looking around you and seeing where need is and rising to the challenge of meeting that need and bringing people together rather than dividing them in order to face our challenges and to create a vision for the future. I think on that note, and this wasn't specifically what you asked, but maybe it was what you were thinking, is as we look at how we get through this pandemic and as we look to the future, sometimes we talk about this idea of returning to normalcy, but I think that we are going to have to do so much more than that. We're going to come through this pandemic to a very, very changed world, a great deal of fear and uncertainty, but also economic devastation. And all of the inequities that we already knew existed, whether it was around healthcare, whether it was around the economy and who earns what or what kind of hours they work and with what certainty. All of those inequities have only been laid more bare and shown themselves to us. And as we look at how we come out of this pandemic, we have to look forward to what we can be and what we should be together. How do we actually make sure that there is healthcare that every single person in this country can afford and that it is excellent care? How do we make sure that all kids, no matter where they live in a state or in this country, have access to the same excellent education and therefore the same opportunities to go after and to achieve whatever they want? How do we think about our young people are able to plan their future, to plan their higher education, and then to emerge from that ready to face the world and be part of it and be part of their communities without drowning in debt? These are the questions in front of us. These are the things that I want to work on and solve in the United States Senate. And to me, that is leadership, and that's how we bring communities together to work in the best ability for each other. Donna, I agree with you so much. And hello, wherever you are in Freeport. So, first of all, one thing that I often talk about on this campaign is something that I believe through and through my heart. And that is that when I am asking people to elect me to be their next US Senator, that I am asking that of every person and that I am making a promise to every person, whether they vote for me or not, no matter where and what corner of the state they live, no matter if they put an R, a D, or an I next to their name. I want every single one of the people who lives in Maine to know that my job will be to represent all of us. And that is why through this campaign, before COVID-19 really hit us here, we went every possible place we could in this state to make sure that we're accessible to people, that people have the ability to come meet me in person, to hear who I am and what I'm about, but also to ask me questions about where I stand on issues and what ideas I have. Look, even in my time in the State House, answering the question that you just asked me has been really important to me because none of us are served well when we retreat to our partisan corners. In fact, my belief is that we have so many of the same goals, but that sometimes we get stuck on just these policy ideas about how to achieve them. And in fact, if we wanted to achieve them in the best possible way, we would be listening to each other and changing those policy ideas we put together so that they have equal parts of both caucuses in them, whether you're talking about Republicans and Democrats or different ideas. So that's how I operate in the way I think of things. And I hope that answered your question.
All right, we have time for one more question, and this one comes from Scott in Saco. He asks, how will you develop renewable energy plan that is good for the Maine economy?
Oh, thank you so much. I think that was Scott in Saco. So forgive me if I got the name incorrectly. So, Scott, this is something that I have spent a lot of time thinking about during my years in the Maine legislature. Actually, when I entered the legislature, I didn't actually have any experience in the energy world, but I looked around at where we were, both in terms of our dependency on energy and the idea that we were only going to increase our use of energy, and the idea that this was also an opportunity for us to combat climate change, depending on how we managed that use and where we got that energy from. And that additionally, and finally, and importantly, it was an opportunity for us to really be on the cutting edge of innovation and technology and to create the jobs of today and the jobs of tomorrow. Now, look, that's not a novel idea. In fact, we have seen other states and other countries really take advantage of that and be on the forefront. It is, in fact, what we in this country used to do best. But we've fallen behind a little bit on that. And I think that producing an economy that uses and is reliant on renewable energy is exactly the kind of opportunity we need. Number one, if we increase our renewable energy generation, and you might know this, and for those of you on the call who don't, we have set very aggressive goals to increase our renewable energy generation for our electricity use here in the state of Maine. And by doing that, of course, we're combating climate change. We're also setting an example for other states and what they can do, and in fact, what we should be doing on the national level. But when we do that, we're employing Mainers immediately in a homegrown economy. And we're also creating an opportunity that we should take advantage of. And I hope that coronavirus actually has shown us how important it is that we have a strong manufacturing sector in this country and in all of our states. If we thought about how not only we produced renewable energy, but how we also thought about how we could produce and manufacture the products that are associated with renewable energy, whether that is wind energy or solar or hydro, then we could really capture a market that would be unique, I think, and could help us be a leader in this country, and then could help our country be a leader in this world. So that is my vision for the tie-in between renewable energy and the economy. And I think we are long past due that we really take advantage of this and step into this century. So I think as I hear that pause, first of all, I want to just thank you for your patience, because it seems like we might have had some technical difficulties with Zoom tonight and been unable to continue to pull people up to talk to us directly on the screen. So my apologies for that. But thank you all for continuing to write in your questions so that we could keep this flowing. And thank you so much for joining us. I have always believed that communication is the key to how we continue to function well together as human beings, but also how we continue to make progress and get things done. Now, coronavirus has absolutely thrown a wrench into that. We're required to physically distance from each other, but to me, that only means that communication is more important. It is challenging for sure, and I deeply, deeply miss being able to see people on the campaign trail, to be able to look into each other's eyes, shake each other's hands, or even give each other a hug. But what I will tell you is we will continue to do this for as long as we need to, until we can be together in the same places again and talk that way. And my commitment to all of you, going back to an earlier question tonight, is that I want to represent every single one of us in the United States Senate to stand up for us and what we need. And right now, that means making sure that we continue to call for the tools that we need to fight this pandemic. And I will keep on making that call until this president or this United States Congress hears it and makes sure that every single state gets what we need to emerge healthy from this and to restore our economies. Thank you so much for your time tonight. Be well and take good care of yourselves and each other.